My name is Earl Beaumont. For 27 years, I mopped floors. I unclogged toilets at 2 in the morning. I replaced ceiling tiles that nobody ever looked up at. I cleaned coffee off marble that some vice president spilled without breaking stride, without looking down, without once acknowledging that a human being was on his knees wiping up after him. I was invisible, completely, utterly, professionally invisible. And I liked it that way. Because here's the thing about being invisible. You can stand in any room. You can hear any conversation. You can watch every deal, every betrayal, every handshake that means nothing. And you can own 81% of the building without a single soul bothering to ask. I know which elevator cable is fraying. I know which law firm is 2 months behind on rent. I know the fire suppression system on 11 hasn't passed inspection since 2019. I know because I filed the complaint with myself. So when they fired me for being just the janitor, they didn't just lose an employee. They lost the building. Literally. Now before I tell you how a mop bucket and a brass key brought down a $200 million real estate firm, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Think of it as tipping your janitor. We notice who tips and who doesn't. We notice everything, actually. That's sort of the whole point of this story. Also, hit the like button. I know it seems small, but I spent 27 years doing small things that held a 14-story building together, so trust me when I tell you, small things matter more than anyone wants to admit. Good, now, back to the mess. And oh, what a beautiful mess it was. Meridian Tower, 14 stories. Built in 1987 by a man named Victor Meridian who believed that buildings weren't investments. They were organisms, and he was right. I learned that building the way a surgeon learns a body. The HVAC system was her lungs, twin air handlers on the roof pulling breath in, pushing it down through ductwork that branched like bronchial tubes into every office, every hallway, every bathroom. The elevators were her circulatory system. 3 passenger, 1 freight. The freight was temperamental. You had to hold the door close button for exactly 3 seconds or she'd jam between floors, sulking like a teenager. I was the only one who knew that. The electrical panel in sub-basement 2, that was her heart. During heat waves, when every floor cranked their air conditioning and the panel threatened to trip, I'd go down there at midnight and redistribute the load manually. I'd done it 40, maybe 50 times over the years. The boiler was her oldest organ, a 1987 original, still ran beautifully, but only because I bled the pressure valve every 72 hours in winter. The procedure wasn't in any manual. It was in my hands, in my memory, in the muscle of 27 years of keeping her alive. She creaked in winter and sweated in summer. I knew every sound she made. Every groan in the pipes was a sentence. Every flicker in the lights was a word. She talked to me. I listened. That was the job. Let me tell you how a janitor came to own 81% of a commercial tower. It's not complicated. It's just patient. Victor Meridian built the building in 1987. Classic developer, enormous vision, enormous debt. He structured ownership as an LLC with 5 partners. Victor held 40%. 4 others held 15 each. I married Victor's daughter, Clara, in 1996. Victor thought I was beneath her. I was a municipal accountant. He was a man who built things with his hands. At least you'll be useful, he told me when he gave me the janitor job after my heart gave out at 31. Stress-induced cardiac event. The doctors said slow down. Clara said stop, so I stopped. Victor died in 2003. Left Clara his 40%. Clara died of cancer in 2011. Left everything to me. Then I got quiet, and I got strategic. Between 2008 and 2022, I bought out 3 of the 4 remaining partners through my attorney, Victor Tran. Each one sold during a crisis. The crash, the pandemic, a near vacancy scare in 2015. Distressed sellers don't ask who's buying. They just want the check to clear. The final partner, a retired dentist in Scottsdale, held the remaining 19%. I held 81. The LLC operating agreement gave the majority holder unilateral authority over leases, operations, and capital expenditures. All records listed the owner as E. Beaumont Trust. Common enough name. Nobody ever connected it to the janitor pushing a mop cart past their corner office. I could have stopped mopping 20 years ago. I kept mopping because the building needed me closer than the ownership line. You don't take care of something you love from a distance. Meridian Tower was fully occupied, and every floor was a neighborhood I knew by heart. Ground floor, the lobby, a coffee shop, and a florist named Anya whose cooler broke in 2019. I fixed it with a capacitor I had in my truck. She gave me free lilies every Friday after that. Clara would have liked that. Floors 2 and 3, Dalton and Associates, a law firm. Behind on rent by 2 months, but the senior partner's wife had cancer, and I wasn't about to push a man while his world was ending. Floors 4 and 5, Apex Accounting. Quiet, paid on time, left me alone, my favorite tenants. Floors 6 through 14, Pinnacle Equity Partners. 9 floors, 65% of the building's rental revenue. The anchor tenant. A 10-year lease signed 3 years prior. They were loud, they were flashy, and they thought they owned the place. They did not. Below everything, the basement, my kingdom, a folding chair, a radio tuned to AM talk, a filing cabinet with 27 years of mechanical drawings, vendor contracts, and inspection records. And on the desk, next to a coffee mug with a chip on the rim, a framed photo of Clara on the day we got married. She was laughing in it. She was always laughing. Every vendor in the building worked with me personally. Phil the Exterminator, 18 years, sent me a Christmas ham every December. The HVAC contractor had my cell number, not the LLC's. The elevator company knew my voice before I said my name. These weren't contracts, they were relationships, and relationships don't transfer when you change a nameplate. Then, one morning, I noticed the elevator getting called to 14 a lot more than usual. That's the executive floor. Someone new had moved in upstairs. New kings always ride to the top first. His name was Derek Whitfield, 37, MBA, new managing director of Pinnacle Equity Partners, hired to, quote, modernize the brand. I looked him up later. His previous venture was a co-working startup that went bankrupt in 11 months. But he had good hair and a firm handshake, and in commercial real estate, that's apparently a resume. 3 weeks after he arrived, Mags forwarded me an email. Derek had sent a demand, not a request, a demand to the building management address. He wanted the lobby renovated, new marble, modern lighting, a digital welcome screen. He'd CC'd his entire executive team as if he were announcing a conquest. I read it in the boiler room, sitting in my folding chair. He wanted to rip out my lobby. Clara picked that marble. Victor Meridian laid the first tile himself, on his hands and knees, in August of 1987. I have the photograph. And this kid wanted to replace it with something that looked like an Apple store. I had Mags send a polite reply. Tenant modifications to common areas require LLC board approval per lease section 4.2. Derek didn't know that LLC board approval meant me, sitting in a basement, saying no. I said no. He moved on, but he didn't forget. Men like Derek never forget being told no. They just file it away and wait for the right moment to punish you for it. The loading zone behind the building was mine, not symbolically, operationally. That's where supply deliveries came in. Cleaning materials, pipe fittings, filters, light bulbs, everything the building needed to function came through that zone. Derek started parking his Porsche Cayenne there. Gunmetal grey, vanity plate, PNCLEQ, I'm not making that up. I left a note on his windshield. Polite, professional. This space is reserved for building operations. Please use your assigned parking in the garage. He crumpled it, left it on the ground, parked there again the next day. Mags sent a formal notice from Meridian Holdings, LLC. He ignored it. I didn't escalate. I started scheduling deliveries for 6 in the morning before he arrived. I worked around him. You don't fight the wind, you just angle the sail. But the audience in my head, the version of Clara who still sat in the passenger seat of every decision I made, she saw what was happening. A man was parking on asphalt he didn't own, in a space he didn't need, to prove a point he couldn't articulate, to a janitor who held the deed. I let it go. I've been letting things go for 27 years. I was good at it. But the ledger was getting full. December, Derek wanted to throw a client holiday party. Big, lavish. The kind of party that says we're successful to people who measure success by the size of the shrimp. He wanted the rooftop terrace, the lobby after hours, the freight elevator for catering equipment, and he wanted all of it free, claiming it was, quote, included in the lease. It wasn't. I've read that lease more times than Derek has read anything in his life. Section 8.4. Common area event usage requires a facility's fee and 30-day advance booking. The fee was $3,500. Reasonable. Standard. Mags sent the fee schedule. Derek called her. I was in the room. I heard every word through the speakerphone. He called her a glorified secretary. I took the phone. Mr. Whitfield, this is Earl from maintenance. Ms. Chen is forwarding you the lease terms. The fee is $3,500 for the terrace. We'll need the deposit by Friday. He hung up without a word. He paid it, but something shifted in the silence before the click. He'd heard my name. He'd connected it to the janitor, and he'd filed it in whatever dark cabinet men like him used to store grudges against people they consider beneath them. I put the phone down. Mags looked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The fuse was getting shorter. January, Derek was preparing for a major investor visit. Pinnacle's future depended on it. New capital, new credibility, new everything. He wanted the building to look, in his words, world-class. He sent a list of demands to Mags. Fresh paint in the common hallways, new carpet in the elevator lobbies, maintenance, carts removed from visible areas during business hours. And then the last line. Ensure custodial staff are not visible during the investor tour on Thursday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I read it once. I read it again. I set the email down and looked at Clara's photograph. Invisible. He wanted me invisible. I had been invisible in that building for 27 years. By choice. There is a cathedral of difference between choosing to be unseen and being told you don't deserve to be seen. One is humility. The other is erasure. On Thursday, I stayed in the basement. I complied. I sat in my folding chair and listened to the building breathe above me. 14 stories of people and pipes and power, all of it resting on a foundation that nobody looked at because foundations aren't glamorous. I stayed invisible, but something inside me, something that had been patient for a very long time, cracked. Not broke, cracked, like a pipe under pressure. And cracked pipes, if you don't fix them, they burst. Thursday, the investor tour. I was in the basement as ordered, invisible, compliant. At 11:30, my phone rang. Rosa from security. Earl, 9th floor, pipe burst, water's coming through the ceiling. I didn't think. I grabbed my wrench and my bucket, and I ran. 4 flights up because the elevator was too slow. I was sweating before I hit the 7th floor. My coveralls were grey and stained, and had my name stitched on the chest in faded blue thread. I rounded the corner on 9, and walked directly into the investor tour. Derek was mid-sentence, gesturing at the conference room like a game show host revealing a prize. And this floor represents our vision for collaborative innovation. Behind him, water was pouring through the ceiling tiles like the building was weeping. I pushed past the group, got on my knees, opened the access panel, found the joint, tightened it. 4 minutes. I'd done it before. I'd done everything before. I stood up, wiped my hands on my coveralls, nodded at the group. All clear. Old building, but she holds up. One of the investors, an older woman in a charcoal blazer, silver hair, sharp eyes, smiled at me. Thank you, she said. She meant it, I could tell. Her name was Adeline Cross. Remember her? Derek did not smile. Derek's face went from white to red to something beyond color, something that lives in the space between humiliation and rage. He didn't say a word to me. He turned back to his investors and kept talking as if the water, the burst pipe, and the man who fixed it were all just weather. But I saw his jaw. I saw his hands. I knew what was coming. The building knew too. She always knew before I did. Friday morning, 5 a.m. I arrived the way I always arrived, before the sun, before the city, before anyone who mattered to anyone. My key card didn't work. I tried it again. Red light, red light, red light. I walked around to the front entrance. A new security guard sat behind the desk. Young kid, didn't recognize me. I'm Earl, maintenance. My card isn't working. He checked a clipboard. Sir, I have a note here. You're supposed to wait in the lobby. So I waited, in the building I owned, in the lobby whose marble I'd cleaned 10,000 times. I waited like a stranger. At 8:15, Derek arrived. Skylar was next to him, his girlfriend, his creative director, a title as hollow as a decorative column. Behind them, the HR director from Pinnacle and a security consultant Derek had hired independently. That hire, by the way, was a lease violation. I didn't mention it. Not yet. Earl, no handshake. No eye contact. Just the name dropped like something he was discarding. We're making a change. The building management company has been notified. We're bringing in a professional facilities team. Your services are no longer needed. The words hung in the lobby air. Professional facilities team. As if I'd been amateur. As if 27 years of keeping this building alive was a hobby. You're firing me, I said. We're upgrading. It's nothing personal. Clean Core Solutions starts Monday. Please leave your keys with security. I reached into my coveralls. I pulled out the Grandmaster key. Brass, cut in 1987 by Victor Meridian himself. There were 2 copies in existence. I held one. The other was in a safe deposit box in Clara's name. I held it up. Derek reached for it. I pulled it back. Just an inch, just enough. This key, I said quietly, was cut by Victor Meridian. There are 2 copies. I have one. The other is in a safe deposit box in Clara Meridian's name. Derek blinked. Who's Clara Meridian? My wife. Confusion, brief, unexamined. He didn't care enough to pursue it. He just wanted the key and the janitor gone. I placed the key on the security desk. Not in his hand, on the desk. There's a difference. One is a transfer, the other is a statement. Good luck with the building, I said, walking toward the door. She's temperamental in February. The boiler needs to be bled every 72 hours or the heat fails above the 8th floor. The instructions are in my head. They're not written down anywhere. We'll figure it out, Derek said, already turning away. Clean Core has people for that. I stopped at the door. One more thing. He turned. Check your lease, Section 12. Read it carefully. I walked out into the cold February air. Behind me, the lobby doors closed with the soft pneumatic sigh they'd been making since 1987. Section 12. The tenant termination clause. It states, in language my attorney crafted with surgical precision, that the LLC may terminate any tenant lease with 90 days' notice if the tenant materially interferes with building operations, including the dismissal or obstruction of LLC-designated maintenance personnel. Derek had just fired the LLC's designated maintenance personnel. He had just triggered his own eviction clause. He had no idea. I sat in my truck for a long time, a 2009 Chevy Silverado, 180,000 miles. The seat was molded to me the way the building was molded to me, shaped by years of showing up. Through the windshield, Meridian Tower rose against a grey February sky. 14 stories. My wife's name on the cornerstone, weathered by 37 winters but still there. Meridian, carved in granite. You can't sand that away. I called Victor Tran. Victor, it's Earl. Earl, it's 8:30 in the morning. You never call before noon. What happened? They fired me. The new Pinnacle guy said I was an eyesore. A long silence. The kind of silence that happens when a lawyer is calculating damages and a friend is calculating fury, and both of them are the same person. They fired the 81% majority owner of the building they lease. He said each word like he was placing it on a scale. They did. Earl, do you want me to send a letter? Not yet. Give it a week. I want to see if the building misses me first. It will. I know, that's the point. I started the truck. I drove home. I fed Dividend, my cat, named after the only financial instrument I ever loved. I sat in my recliner. The house was quiet. Clara's absence was loud. And I waited for the building to start screaming. Saturday, February. The boiler needed bleeding every 72 hours. I'd last done it Thursday morning, before the pipe burst, before the tour, before the firing. By Saturday afternoon, the pressure had built past the safe threshold and the system shut itself down. Floors 8 through 14 lost heat. Clean Core Solutions, Derek's professional facilities team, consisted of 2 men in matching teal polos who specialized in mopping and surface sanitation. They stood in front of the boiler like tourists at Stonehenge. They did not know what they were looking at. They did not know what bleeding a boiler meant. They did not know that the word bleed, in this context, had nothing to do with injury and everything to do with survival. Mags called me. The boiler, she said. Yep. They want me to fix it. You don't know how. I never taught anyone. That's on me. But I don't work there anymore. Well, tell them to call a commercial HVAC contractor. Emergency weekend rate is about 5,000. They'll need the mechanical drawings from my filing cabinet in the basement, the one that's locked, with the key I left on the security desk. A pause. They lost the key already, Earl. Of course they did. Monday morning, rush hour. The freight elevator jammed between floors 7 and 8. Inside, a clean core worker and 200 pounds of cleaning supplies. The car stopped. The lights flickered. The emergency phone rang into a voicemail box nobody had set up. Nobody knew the trick. Hold the door close button for 3 seconds. That's it. 3 seconds of patience, and the old girl would reset herself and keep climbing. I'd figured it out in 2004. Told no one. Not out of secrecy, nobody ever asked. The elevator company was called. Earliest availability, Tuesday. The freight elevator sat dead for 24 hours. Every delivery, mail, packages, Pinnacle's catering for a client lunch had to come through the lobby and the passenger elevators. Office workers shared rides with rolling carts of sandwich platters. The lobby looked like a loading dock. Derek sent an email to Mags in all capitals. This is unacceptable. Mags forwarded it to me. I was at home, in my recliner, with Dividend on my lap. I typed back, tell him to hold the door close button for 3 seconds. Or don't, I'm making soup. She didn't tell him. The soup was tomato, Clara's recipe. It was excellent. The phone calls started coming. Not to Mags, not to Meridian Holdings, to me. Phil the exterminator called first. Earl, my contract renewal is due next week. I'm not signing anything with someone I haven't met. You want me to keep the building clean, you tell me who I'm working with. I told him I didn't work there anymore. He said, then neither do I, not until I hear otherwise. The HVAC contractor called next. Came out to fix the boiler. $5,000 emergency call. Nobody could let me into the mechanical room. New guys didn't have a key, didn't have the drawings, didn't know what floor the boiler was on. I charged the trip fee and left. Boiler's still broken. The waste management company. Our truck showed up Tuesday. The dumpster access gate was padlocked. Someone changed the code. We can't pick up. You're looking at health code violations by Wednesday. Each one called me. Each one. Because the contracts were with the LLC, but the relationships were with Earl. And relationships don't forward like emails. They don't transfer like leases. They live in the space between people, and when one person disappears, the space collapses. I didn't tell anyone to stop working. I didn't tell anyone to continue. I simply said 5 times to 5 different people, "I don't work there anymore. You'll have to work that out with the new management." I didn't orchestrate a thing. I removed myself. And gravity, patient, honest, absolute gravity, did the rest. The annual fire inspection. Every year for 20 years, I handled it personally. I knew Inspector Reeves, a quiet man with a clipboard and an eye for detail that bordered on religious. The week before each inspection, I'd walk the building floor by floor, test every extinguisher, replace the dim stairwell lights, check every sprinkler head, every alarm pull, every exit sign. I'd meet Reeves the morning of coffee in hand, and we'd walk it together. He'd find nothing because I'd already found everything. 20 consecutive passes, not a single violation. This year, nobody prepared. Nobody walked the floors. Nobody replaced the stairwell light on 10 that had been flickering for a month. Nobody tested the fire suppression system on 11, the one I'd been planning to repair before I was removed. Reeves showed up. Clean Core didn't know what a fire inspection was. They thought he was there to check the smoke detectors in the lobby. The suppression system on 11 failed, completely. The sprinkler heads hadn't been flushed, the pressure was wrong. The backup valve was corroded. Floors 10 through 14 received a fire safety violation. Pinnacle's offices, Pinnacle's executive suite, Pinnacle's investor meeting rooms. 30 days to remediate, or those floors would be ordered vacated. I heard about it from Mags. I didn't feel triumph. I felt the weight of it. That suppression system wasn't just a line item. It was the thing standing between people and fire. Real fire, the kind that kills. I hadn't caused the failure. It was failing before I left. But my absence had removed the only person who was managing it. That thought sat in my chest like a stone. Derek was drowning. Frozen pipes, dead elevator, garbage rotting in the loading zone, a fire violation threatening to evacuate his offices. His employees were wearing coats at their desks because the heat still wasn't right. So he did what arrogant men do when the walls close in. He escalated. He demanded a meeting with the building's ownership. He wanted to meet the LLC. He wanted answers. He threatened to withhold rent. Mags arranged a call with Victor Tran, introduced only as legal counsel for Meridian Holdings LLC. Victor was magnificent. His voice had the temperature of a walk-in freezer. "Mr. Whitfield, Meridian Holdings notes that you dismissed the LLC's designated facilities manager without consultation in violation of lease section 12.4. You have also failed to remit the common area maintenance fee for February, which was due on the 1st. You are in breach on 2 counts. I fired a janitor. Derek's voice cracked on the word. He was your janitor. He was an LLC employee. He was the LLC's designated building operations manager. His title was custodial. His authority was contractual. His dismissal triggers a formal lease review under Section 12. This is insane. Who even owns this LLC? I want to talk to the owner. The majority stakeholder prefers to remain anonymous at this time. Anonymous. I'm the anchor tenant. I pay $1.2 million a year. And your rent is late. Good day, Mr. Whitfield. The line went dead. And Derek was left standing in a cold office, in a building that was falling apart, owned by someone he couldn't see. Derek hired a private investigator. Of course he did. Men who can't solve problems by thinking solve them by spending. The PI pulled the LLC records, state filings, corporate registry. The majority owner of Meridian Holdings LLC was listed as E. Beaumont Trust. Derek stared at the name. Beaumont. It meant nothing to him. He ran it through his network. Nobody knew an E. Beaumont in commercial real estate. Nobody at any fund. Nobody at any bank. A ghost. Then Skylar, who, to her eternal credit, did exactly one useful thing in this entire story. Googled it. She found an obituary. Clara Beaumont, née Meridian, born 1968, died 2011. Beloved daughter of Victor Meridian, founder of Meridian Holdings, survived by her husband, Earl Beaumont. Skylar turned the laptop to face Derek. He looked at the screen, at the name, at the photo of Clara, at the word husband, at the name Earl. The lobby shifted under him. The floor he was standing on, the floor he'd ordered the janitor to stay off of, the floor he'd claimed as his stage. It belonged to someone else entirely. The janitor, Derek said. Nobody spoke. The janitor owns the building. His voice was barely a whisper now. I fired my own landlord. Derek moved fast. He called Mags. His voice had changed. The command was gone, replaced by something wet and desperate. Get Earl back. Offer him anything. Double his salary, triple it, whatever he wants. Mags let the silence stretch. She'd been waiting for this call the way a cat waits at a mouse hole. He wasn't on salary, Derek. He was on the LLC payroll. He set his own compensation. You fired a man from his own building. Just get him on the phone, please. Please, that was new. She gave him Earl's number. Derek called. Earl answered on the third ring. Earl, this is Derek Whitfield. A pause, the pause of a man in a recliner with a cat on his lap, who has been waiting for exactly this call for exactly this many days. I know who you are, Derek. You're the man who parked in my loading zone. Earl agreed to meet, not at the building, not at a restaurant, at a hardware store. Henderson's True Value on Route 9, the plumbing aisle. Earl was holding a 3/4-inch copper elbow when Derek arrived. Jeans, flannel, work boots. He looked like what he was, a man who fixed things. Derek was in a suit, under the fluorescent lights, surrounded by PVC fittings and toilet repair kits. He looked like a mannequin someone had placed in the wrong store as a joke. You should have told me you own the building, Derek said. You should have read the lease. This is fraud. You pretended to be a janitor. I am a janitor. I'm also the owner. People can be more than one thing, Derek. That's the part you never understood. Derek's hands were shaking. Barely enough. What do you want? Money? An apology? I'll apologize on camera. Earl put the pipe fitting down, slowly, the way you set down something you've been carrying for a long time. I don't want an apology. I want you to understand something. My wife's father built that building with his hands. He laid the first pipe, wired the first circuit. When he died, Clara kept it alive. When she died, I kept it alive. I mopped the floors because the floors needed mopping. I bled the boiler because the boiler needed bleeding. I didn't need a title. I needed the building to stand. So what now? You evict us? I don't want to evict you. I want you to stop treating the building like a prop and start treating it like a responsibility. Rosa works the night shift. She has a son. The florist on 1 is barely making rent. The lawyers on 3 are going through hell. Those people matter more than your investiture. Derek said nothing. For perhaps the first time, he was listening without preparing a response. However, Earl's voice dropped half a register. You fired me. You triggered Section 12. My attorney has filed the lease review. You have 90 days to vacate unless we renegotiate. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. You have 2 options. 1, vacate. I release the space. I already have 3 interested parties. 2, you stay, but there are conditions. The conditions came out like items on a maintenance checklist. Each one precise, each one earned. Earl reinstated as building operations manager, with the title. Rosa gets a raise and a permanent contract. The florist's rent frozen for 2 years. Pinnacle pays for the fire suppression repair on 11. Derek writes a personal letter of apology to Mags for calling her a glorified secretary. Skylar's fake position eliminated. You want to date her, date her. Don't put her on a payroll she doesn't earn. Derek had no leverage. His investors were nervous. His employees were freezing. His offices smelled like neglect. He agreed to every condition. But Earl wasn't done. And Derek. What? You never park in my loading zone again. That night, Earl's phone rang at 11:45. Rosa. Earl, 11th floor, electrical fire, small, everyone's out, but Earl. He was in his truck before she finished the sentence. He drove through empty streets to the building he hadn't entered in 2 weeks. Rosa met him at the service entrance. She didn't ask if he was allowed in. She held the door open. 11th floor. The scorch marks ran across the ceiling like a river delta drawn in ash. The suppression system hadn't activated. Of course it hadn't. It had failed the inspection. It would have failed in a real emergency too. The fire department had come and gone. No injuries, a near miss, close enough to taste. Earl stood in the damaged hallway. He smelled the char. He looked at the ceiling where water should have fallen and didn't. This was what he'd been afraid of, not the least dispute, not the money, not the power play. This, a fire on a floor with a broken sprinkler system that he had been planning to repair. A floor full of people who went home at 5 o'clock, trusting that someone was keeping them safe. He'd left to make a point. The point almost killed someone. He stayed until 3 in the morning, floor by floor, system by system. Every fire suppression node, every alarm pull, every exit light. The way he'd always done it. The way nobody else knew how to do. When he left, the building was safe again. Not because of a lease clause. Not because of an LLC. Because a man with a flashlight and a conscience walked every floor in the dark and checked. Earl returned on a Monday. Not as a janitor. Not as a CEO. As the building operations manager. A title that finally, after 27 years, fit like the right wrench on the right bolt. He went straight to the basement. They'd offered him an office on 5. He turned it down. The basement is where the pipes are. I go where the pipes go. But now there was something new on the door. A brass nameplate. Earl BAUMONT, Building OPITIONS Manager, Meridian HOLDINGS LLC. Mags had it made. She'd chosen brass on purpose, same metal as the Grandmaster key. He ran his thumb across the letters. Then he opened the door, sat in his folding chair, and turned on the radio. The vendors came back. Phil showed up with a Christmas ham in February. Heard you were back. Welcome home, Earl. The boiler was bled. The elevator was fixed. Earl showed the young clean-core kid the 3-second trick. Hold it down. Count to 3. She just needs to know you're patient. The garbage was collected. The HVAC hummed. The lights steadied. The building took a long, deep breath. The kind of breath a body takes when the fever breaks. She was alive again, and so was Earl. The ripples settled, each one into its right place. Mrs. Adeline Cross, the investor who'd watched Earl fix a burst pipe on his knees, called Mags the following week. She didn't want to invest in Pinnacle. She wanted to invest in the building. Any building maintained by a man who runs toward a burst pipe, she said, is a building I want to own a piece of. Earl sold her the retired dentist's 19%. She became the minority partner. He retained 81. They shook hands in the lobby, on Clara's marble. Derek was still there, quieter, smaller somehow, though he hadn't lost weight. He held the elevator for Earl in the mornings now. He didn't park in the loading zone. He wasn't redeemed. He was leashed. It was enough. Skylar posted an Instagram story after her position was eliminated. Sometimes the universe removes you from spaces that no longer serve your energy. Earl didn't have Instagram. Mags read it to him. He didn't laugh. He just said, I hope she finds a real job. Rosa got her raise. When Mags told her, she cried. Earl found her afterward in the stairwell, wiping her eyes. You let me in the building at midnight, he told her. That's worth more than money. Rosa looked at him, this quiet man she'd known for 15 years, without ever knowing what he carried. I would have let you in even if you didn't own it, she said. That's the line that broke him, not the firing, not the confrontation, not the fire. Rosa in a stairwell telling the truth. His eyes watered. He didn't wipe them. Some things you let fall. The law firm on floors 2 and 3 caught up on their rent. Earl had given them an extension without being asked. The senior partner found Earl in the lobby and shook his hand. "Thank you for not being an asshole, Earl. Thank you for not being a flight risk, counselor." They both laughed. It echoed off Clara's marble. It sounded like the building laughing too. A week later, Earl found an envelope slid under the basement door. No return address. Cream-colored stationery. The kind you buy when you're trying to say something you've never said before and you want the paper to help. He opened it. Handwritten, Derek's handwriting was neater than Earl expected. Careful, even, as if each word had been chosen with effort. "Earl," I looked up Victor Meridian. I read about the building. I read about Clara. I didn't know. I'm not going to pretend it changes what I did, but I want you to know that I see the building differently now. I see you differently. I'll probably never be the man you are, but I'm trying to be less of the man I was. D. Earl read it twice. He folded it along its original creases. He opened the drawer next to Clara's photo and placed the letter inside. He didn't shred it. He didn't frame it. He kept it. In the drawer next to the woman who would have told him to keep it. Some people can't learn. Some people won't. But some people, a few, if you're patient, if the building doesn't burn down first, some people crack open just enough to let the light reach something that was buried. Derek might become decent, slowly, imperfectly, the way old buildings become beautiful not by renovation, but by endurance. Earl closed the drawer. He picked up his mop. 5 in the morning, February light, the kind of grey that isn't sad, it's honest. The city hadn't woken up yet. The building was breathing slowly. The boiler hummed below. The elevator rested on one. Earl stood in the lobby. Clara's marble stretched out before him, polished by 3 decades of footsteps and care. He dipped the mop. He pushed it across the floor in long, slow arcs. The rhythm was meditative, devotional, not a job, a practice. His phone buzzed. Mags. Earl, HVAC inspection at 9. Also, Mrs. Cross wants to discuss a capital improvement plan for the lobby. New lighting, maybe some updated fixtures. Earl typed back with one thumb. Tell her the marble stays. He put the phone away. He dipped the mop again. Water, soap, floor. Water, soap, floor. The simplest equation in the world and the most honest. They called me the janitor. They were right. I clean up messes. Some of them are on the floor. Some of them wear suits and drive Porsches and have MBAs from schools that don't teach you how a boiler works. And some of them take 27 years to mop up. But the building is still standing. Clara's name is still on the cornerstone. The marble stays. The cat is fed. The boiler is bled. And so am I. Still here, still standing, still mopping. Not because I have to. Because some things are worth taking care of, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Thanks for watching, you beautiful underdogs. Hit that subscribe button. You've come this far, you might as well stick around. I've got more stories like this. Stories about the people who hold the world together from the bottom and never get a nameplate for it, until they do. Hit the like button too. Think of it as tipping your janitor. We remember, we always remember. And next time somebody tells you you're just anything, just the janitor, just the assistant, just the intern, just a cog in somebody else's machine, smile. They don't know what you own. They don't know what you carry. They don't know that the building they're standing in is standing because of you. Smile, say nothing, and wait. The building always knows who keeps it alive. See you in the next one.